Hello team, I hope we're all good. I hope you've had a good week and I hope you enjoyed last week's topic, clouds. I hope you managed to get outside and have a look up and have a look at the clouds up in the sky. Today, Thursday, is quite stratosy, the dullest of the clouds, but yesterday, Wednesday and Tuesday I thought were particularly good cloud watching days. There was lots going on up there, lots of high-level clouds, lots of cirrus, lots of mid-layer clouds, altocumulus quite a lot. So I thought they were quite interesting days. Good. Now this week we are going to have a look at some tides, which is quite fun and quite important for us as sailors. Now I'd like to do things slightly differently this week. If you can watch the RYA Sail Smarts video first before carrying on with this video, that'd be great. So if you haven't already watched that video, pause this one. And once you've watched that, come back here and we'll start talking about tides. Great. If you have already watched the Sail Smarts video on tides, brilliant. We'll move on. We'll start talking about tides in our local area, in Lymington and in the Solent, around and about here. Now in the video, they talked about the tidal sequence being sort of 6 hours going up, 6 hours coming back down, 6 hours coming back up, 6 hours coming back down in any one day. So you get 2 high tides, 2 low tides in a day. And they also mentioned that the moon and the sun are what drives our tides. And this is all good. But what they didn't mention was that actually geography plays a massive part in how big our tidal range is and what our tides look like. And for Lymington and the Solent, that gets very interesting. Now the sun and the moon combined, they have enough gravitational force to raise the sea level, the water level, by only about 45 centimetres. And that's when they're in line. So how do we get these varying different levels of tidal range? I mean, here in Lymington, we have about, on a good spring, we have about a 3 metre tidal range, something like that. Not too far away, down the Channel Islands, down in Guernsey, you can have a 10 metre tidal range. That's a massive difference. And that's all down to geography. And the little gaps that the water has to squeeze through and flow around and all sorts. So it makes tides very, very interesting and very, very local. So we'll talk about our local tides here in Lymington. And first thing I'd like to talk about is our very, very interesting feature of our double high water. Now this sounds completely mad, and it is actually. If you have a look at a tidal graph like this one, you can see quite clearly, okay, the water comes up and then it starts going down a little bit. So it's coming up, starts to go down a little bit, comes back up, and then whoosh, out it goes. So we do have the tide coming up and we do have the tide coming down. But what happens is it gets to the top, it stops, has a little hang about, goes down a bit, comes back up a bit and goes back down. So you'll find that when you're watching the tide, it'll come in and it'll look like it's high water for quite a long time before then suddenly, whoosh, all the water disappears. And this is all to do with our local geography. Here I have a nice chart of the Isle of Wight. And we are up here, Lymington, there we are. This is Hurst Narrows, Hurst Castle, here we go. And what happens is the tide comes up and it starts coming in and it starts coming up Lymington, so the tide starts coming up. And what's also happening is the tide's coming up over here, the water's coming in round this way, it starts coming up the other side of the Solent, goes up to Southampton, but also some of it comes this way. So by the time the tide turns to start going out here, it then starts coming up again from over here. So this is how we get our double high water. And then suddenly everything just goes whoosh, okay, and out it goes. And that's why we have our super cool double high water. And it's really good because it means we have lots of time where there's high water and lots of water to go sailing. But when it turns, wow, we get some really strong currents, quite a lot stronger than you'd expect for somewhere with a 3 metre tidal range. So it's very important to know when it's going to turn, because that will have a big impact on our sailing, because suddenly that water is moving quite fast. So these are some things to look out for in a local area, and the more we go sailing out on the Solent, out at the entrance of the river, the more we'll get a chance to experience this and get a feel for it. Now, the reason we're doing tides this week is because on Saturday, 27th, we have a full moon. And as we know, the tide is driven by the sun and the moon. So a full moon is when that you have the earth and the sun and the moon all in alignment, as Jake explained in our video. So the sun is reflecting off the moon and you can see a full moon. So that means we're going to have some spring tides. Now, the high spring tides normally occur a few days after the full moon. So there is a little bit of a lag. So if you look at the tidal charts, you'll see that the actual highest high waters of the spring tide are going to be around Monday, Tuesday this week. But it does mean that they're going to still be pretty high on Saturday and Sunday, and also pretty low. So we have a nice challenge for you this week, which is to get out at the times of high water and low water and have a look. So if you can, especially if you can get down to the river entrance, you know, that walk that goes around from the sailing club around the marshes, if you can get out to one of the corners there and you can see the river entrance with the channel where the ferries come up, and you've got all the islands and the mud banks, okay, and that's going to look very, very different at high water and low water. Now, I've written down the times of high water and low water for us, so you don't have to look it up, but you can if you want. Go out there, see if you can find some tidal information. On Saturday, our high water is about 11 o'clock. That's that first high water is about 11 o'clock, so it hangs around for quite a while after that. And then that's in the morning. Then our low water is at 5 o'clock. And of course, there will be other high waters and low waters, but they're going to be at night time. So these are the ones in the daytime that we can get out and have a look at. And on Sunday, again, it moves on roughly an hour, each day. So our high water is 12 o'clock and our low water is 6 o'clock in the evening. And these will be really good times to get out and have a look at the state of the water in the sort of areas that we sail. Ideally, if you can get out both at high water and low water and can compare the difference between the two, amazing. If you can only get out to see one, equally that's fine. And if you can only get out to see one, I'd say the most interesting is low water, because you get to see everything that's under the water where we normally go sailing, and that's quite fun as well. So that's your challenge for this week. Saturday or Sunday, try and get out and see either a high or a low, or even both. And that would be fabulous. And I think that's all from me. Although I will say, one last thing is the highest spring waters and the highest spring tides, so the biggest ranges, tend to be around the equinox. And that's not too far away. That's next month in March. So when we get our spring tides next month, our second set of spring tides next month, get out and have a look, because that tidal range is going to be even bigger. So if you get that chance, and if you remember, try to get out and have a look at the tides. But either way, tides can be quite complicated if you start getting right into the nitty-gritty and the detail. But on the face of it, they're actually really quite simple. Just remember what Jake said. Tides come in, tides go out. Tides go up, and tides go down. And that does affect our sailing. And the more we go sailing on the river and out in the Solent, the more we'll get a chance to experience and get familiar with the tides, and especially the tides that we have around Lymington. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your challenges. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.